Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a fiery Judiciary Committee hearing where Senator John Kennedy put Harmeet Dhillon, John Sauer, and Ryan Reitz in the hot seat. Trust me, you don't want to miss this one. We've got sharp legal debates, bold statements, and even a few classic Kennedy one-liners. So if you're ready for some serious legal drama with a side of humor, stick around. And before we jump in, if you enjoy content like this, do me a favor and smash that subscribe button. Now, let's get into it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The credentials of each of you are impressive. Ms. Dhillon, did you ever have Professor Paul Stephen at Virginia Law School?
I did, Senator. I think it was my first year.
Yeah. He's brilliant. He should be on the federal bench. He would have been if I had gotten here sooner. Mr. Reitz, I introduced Senator Cruz to some of his supporters one time. I was asked about him, and I said, "No, let me tell you about Senator Cruz. He's brilliant, but so was the Unabomber. You've got to watch him like a hawk." Was that a fair description? You don't have to answer that. Is it true that after a Scot, Senator Cruz can burp the alphabet backwards? You don't have to answer that either. Let me say something serious for a second, and then I'll have one or two questions. You're all adults. You're all officers of the court. So I'm going to give you some advice. I may be wrong, but I doubt it. Don't ever take the position that you're not going to follow the order of a federal court. Ever. Now, you can disagree with it. Within the bounds of legal ethics, you can criticize it. You can appeal it. Or you can resign. For 4 years, I have watched people in this town, not everybody, but many, try to undermine the legitimacy of the federal judiciary. And it triggered each and every time my gag reflex. I've watched them try to pack the Supreme Court. I have watched an esteemed member of this body on the steps of the Supreme Court threaten Justices Gorsuch and Justice Kavanaugh. I've seen that. I've seen this body, some in good faith, but some in bad faith, try to impose an unconstitutional, violative of the separation of powers doctrine, ethics code on the Supreme Court, just to try to undermine their legitimacy. Now, all our judiciary has, an equal branch of government has its legitimacy. It doesn't have an army. Don't ever say you're not going to follow the order of a court. You may not agree with it, but that's my advice.
Kennedy starts off by acknowledging the impressive credentials of the witnesses, but then he takes a lighthearted detour, asking Dhillon if she ever had a certain professor at Virginia Law. A little small talk before the storm, right? Then, things get interesting. Kennedy brings up a past comment where he compared Senator Ted Cruz to the Unabomber. Yikes. He even jokes about Cruz being able to burp the alphabet backwards. Now that's an image I wasn't expecting. Now, this is where Kennedy lays down the law. He shifts gears and gives some firm advice to the panel. Never, ever refuse to follow a federal court order. He makes it clear, you can criticize it, you can appeal it, you can even resign, but outright defiance, that's a no-go. Kennedy has watched people try to undermine the federal judiciary for years, and he's not having it. From court-packing schemes to attacks on Supreme Court justices, he's seen it all, and it clearly fires him up.
And I think you ought to take it. Mr. Sauer, I'm glad to see that Hawley took you to a Cracker Barrel for lunch.
Yes, Senator, if you're familiar with the area, it's the one near Columbia, Missouri, about halfway through Missouri on I-70.
I've always thought of Hawley as more of a Whole Foods type guy.
I can only say that his description of it was accurate. It was chicken fried steak that we were eating.
I'm glad to see that his taste is getting better. Tell me, Mr. Sauer, give me an example of an instance where a legislative body could pass a statute.
And just when you think it's all serious business, Kennedy takes a detour. He brings up how Senator Josh Hawley took John Sauer to a Cracker Barrel for lunch. I mean, nothing says Judiciary Committee like a good old-fashioned chicken fried steak discussion, right? Kennedy even jokes that Hawley seems like more of a Whole Foods kind of guy. It's classic Kennedy, mixing humor with hard-hitting points. And hey, if you love moments like these, go ahead and hit that like button so I know to keep covering them.
Tell me, Sauer, give me an example of an instance where a legislative body could pass a statute discriminating on the basis of race, which of course is a suspect classification, that could pass the strict scrutiny test.
I can't think of a hypothetical as I sit here. However, I am aware that there is a line of cases holding that.
I am too, but is there any way that a legislative body can pass legislation classifying people on the basis of race that passes strict scrutiny?
I can't imagine a scenario as I sit here, Senator.
How does the doctrine of equal protection apply to the federal government? I know the 14th Amendment says that the states can't deny our people equal protection of the law, but I don't see anything in the Constitution about the federal government in equal protection. It's not in the Fifth Amendment. I'm not suggesting we shouldn't, but how does it apply?
Senator, I believe there's a Supreme Court decision from the late 1940s or early 1950s that essentially incorporated the doctrine of equal protection. People say reverse incorporated the doctrine of equal protection through the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment.
You agree with the substantive due process model?
I have criticized that doctrine in many of the legal briefs that I've filed that I've disclosed to the committee.
Well, without it, how would we have equal protection of the laws applied to the federal government?
As I sit here today, I don't dispute the holding of what the Supreme Court held about 60, 70 years ago, and I accept that as binding law.
You just think they got the methodology wrong?
Well, you asked about the substantive due process doctrine. The doctrine of reverse incorporation is different than that. And as I sit here today, I'm not prepared to say whether they got it right or got it wrong. I'd have to read the opinion again. It is long settled in binding law, in my understanding, though.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. And in light of your initial line of questioning, I ask unanimous consent that at subsequent hearings, Senator Kennedy be bound and gagged. I'll withdraw that request and recognize Senator Whitehouse.
All right, now back to the legal firestorm. Kennedy asks Sauer a tough one. Can Congress pass a law that discriminates based on race and still pass strict scrutiny? Sauer hesitates. He can't really think of a good example. Kennedy keeps pressing. He wants to know how the Equal Protection Clause applies to the federal government when it's not explicitly in the Constitution. Sauer points to Supreme Court precedent, but Kennedy isn't letting up. He wants a rock-solid answer. This is classic Senate grilling, legal minds on full display, with Kennedy making sure nobody gets off easy. And just when you think it's over, boom, a final mic drop moment. The chairman jokes about Senator Kennedy being bound and gagged at the next hearing. Of course, it's all in good fun, but you can tell this was one wild judiciary session. So, what do you guys think? Did Kennedy go too far, or was he right on the money? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And of course, if you haven't already, subscribe for more deep dives into political showdowns just like this one. See you in the next video.